Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the sixth in CSW Group series of webinars, Inspiring Futures. If you've not attended any of these webinars this week, this is a series that we are running in conjunction with the Careers and Enterprise Company, and the aim is to offer a range of different topics intended to help young people think about their next steps once they leave education and move towards the world of work. So my name is Oliver Jenkin. I'm a career development consultant with CSW, and today I'm going to be talking about getting resilient for the world of work. So this is what I'm hoping to cover today. So as we're going to be looking at resilience, we're going to first of all try and define it and try and decide for ourselves, what do we mean by resilience? We're going to be thinking about why resilience is relevant for our careers and relevant for when we come to enter the workplace. We're also going to be looking at what we can do to build up our resilience. Is resilience something that stays the same, or is it something that we can improve and strengthen? And lastly, I'll be showing you some resources where you can go to get further support and help if you need it. First of all, what do we mean by resilience? So here I've got a very, very short video with some young people, all of whom are giving their own ideas on what they think we mean by that.
I think resilience is the ability to bounce back and knowing what to do in the future when it happens again.
It's your way of dealing with something and managing to say to yourself, I've done this, I've faced this, but I'm not going to face it again. It's your way of combating something and the way that you're going to deal with it in future.
For me, emotional resilience is to be able to cope with life issues, but also succeed at the same time.
Resilience is developing ways of coping with different and difficult situations.
So sort of building up a toolbox of ways to cope with them.
Resilience means being able to cope normally when there's things going on and still succeeding.
I think it's important to build up your resilience because you have a better communication skills with other people around the world, and also you have more confidence in the future.
Resilience is important because it's the way that you're going to deal with a situation. It's that you don't have to face the same thing again, and it means that your mental strength is just a lot better than it has been previously.
Resilience is important because it can help people deal with new situations, and it can help people as they're growing up throughout their lives.
It allows you to be yourself in a way. That gives you that confidence to strive.
Emotional resilience is important because it allows people to adapt and to change their life so they can cope with anything that they're faced with.
To me, resilience is the power to come back up. So, like a bit of mud, you squidge it, and it gets really sad and squished and flat. So, you're upset, you're crying your eyes out, and then somebody comes along and they help you to come back up and be a thick piece of mud again.
Okay, so we heard lots of different views on what resilience means there, but I think what I heard is that resilience is to do with sticking at things, it's to do with not giving up. It's that thing inside of us that keeps us going when life or situations seem really hard and difficult. So, to summarize, what do we mean by resilience? So it's the ability to cope when things are difficult or when things are going wrong. Sometimes things will go wrong in life. Sometimes we make mistakes. Nothing is always perfect, but it's that thing that keeps us going even in spite of that. And it is very useful. It can help us deal with lots of different challenges in life, such as when we have to learn new things. And that might be just new topics that we're learning about in school or college, or it could be new tasks that we're trying to learn to deal with in the workplace. It's also to do with trying our best when we feel stuck and recognizing that when we feel that things are difficult, when we're not sure what to do next, that's an opportunity to learn and get better, as we'll see in a moment. It's being strong on the inside. And when I say strong, I don't mean being tough. I don't mean being sort of unfeeling or really kind of hard, but it is about maybe even when we feel stressed and even when we feel worried, it's still that determination to keep on going. And also, it's something that can help us get used to new people and places. So, for example, if anybody listening is in year 11, for instance, and is about to transition into a new school or a college, or maybe do something like an apprenticeship, it's that quality that will hopefully help you get used to your new learning place of learning or place of work, and the new people that you'll be studying or working alongside. So there are lots of different examples we could look to for um, examples of resilience and how resilience can benefit you. So I've got three different stories of quite famous people who have, in different ways, demonstrated resilience. So the first is Nelson Mandela. So Nelson Mandela lived in South Africa, and he lived there, grew up there at a time when there was a system that called apartheid. And apartheid meant that black people in South Africa were not treated equally with white people. They didn't have the same rights. They couldn't do the same jobs. It was a very, very unequal situation. So Nelson Mandela campaigned against this. He tried to make changes in society and had to come up against a government that didn't want those changes to happen. In fact, at one point, he was put in prison for quite a long period of time. But in time, he was released and was able to become the president of South Africa. And in so doing, was able to make a lot of positive changes to his country. Next, we have Malala Yousafzai. So Malala lived in an area of Pakistan where the kind of the culture that she grew up in, there was a view that women and girls should not be educated in the same way as men and boys. So that was another type of inequality. And Malala really wanted to gain an education, really wanted to improve her own life, and also wanted this for other girls and young people in her community. So again, she was a campaigner and campaigned for that. And not everyone in her society agreed with this. In fact, she was attacked and suffered quite a serious head injury and had to be taken to the UK and receive medical care. But she had an operation, made a full recovery, and eventually was able to continue her education and attended Oxford University. And to this day, she still campaigns on behalf of girls and women to promote their right to education and opportunities. And finally, we have Professor Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking was one of the most famous scientists of the 20th and 21st centuries. His ideas changed the way that we think about the entire universe. The way we think about science and physics is completely different because of his work. Now, Stephen Hawking had a medical condition called motor neurone disease, which reduced his ability to move, eventually led to him being wheelchair bound. Eventually, even he lost his ability to speak and needed technology to make himself understood by others. Nonetheless, none of that stopped him from teaching, lecturing, writing books, and being a very, very influential individual. And he was also able to live far, far longer than many of the doctors who were treating him in his 20s thought that he'd be able to live. So three different examples of resilience there. And I think really, if you look at your own life and the lives of those around you, you can probably find some other examples of people in your own local knowledge. So what's all this got to do with the workplace and our careers? Why do employers like resilience? Well, research has shown that employees who are resilient tend to concentrate and do better at their jobs. So they kind of have the positivity, they have the concentration to focus on the task at hand and not get lost in sort of doubts about whether or not they're able to do a job. Resilient employees get on well with others. So resilience is also linked with good cooperation and good teamwork skills too. They're good problem solvers. And that kind of hints at what I was saying earlier about if things are hard, resilience is the thing that helps us tackle problems and tackle difficulties. So resilient people tend to see a problem as something that can be fixed with enough effort rather than a reason to give up. And they don't get upset when they make mistakes, which is just as well, because all of us will make mistakes in life. It's unavoidable, both in our education and in the workplace. We're only human, and not everything we do or try will always go right. So the thing to do, a resilient person will tell us, is to not look at it as a sign of failure, but maybe to look at it as something to learn from and not get too upset about it. And all of this helps to make resilient people happier and healthier, both in their bodies and also in their minds and in their emotional state too. So you might be watching this and thinking about your own situation and wondering, well, how resilient am I then? And I would say here that probably, if we're honest, most of us would say that our resilience kind of varies and fluctuates. There are times in our lives when we might feel pretty resilient. There might be other times when we feel a bit vulnerable and feel a bit less resilient, perhaps. But on the average, have a think about how you tend to approach some of the difficulties, some of the problems, some of the setbacks you experience in life. Someone with a decent level of resilience might look at a problem that they don't know how to do and think, okay, well, I'm not quite sure how to tackle that, but I can learn how to do it. Even if I have to ask somebody for help, I can get the help and I can learn how to do this new task. Or they might think about the mistakes they make and think, okay, well, I'm not always going to get it right, but if I do get it wrong, I can learn how to do better next time. And also they might think about trying new tasks and activities and think, oh, I'm not scared of that. This is an opportunity to learn and grow and develop. By contrast, the opposite of this, so someone maybe who would need to work on their resilience, might look at problems like this in a different way. So they might look at something difficult, maybe it's a new thing they're trying to learn in school or a new task in the workplace. And if finding that they don't get it right first time, may tend to give up and think, well, what's the point? I'm never going to get this right. They might also worry about mistakes and think that it's a bad thing if someone points out my mistakes. Actually, that person might be trying to help. They might be trying to point it out to help you get it right next time. It all depends how we choose to look at it. And rather than being interested or excited by trying new things, that might be something that they would tend to avoid because they might look at it as another risk of failing rather than something that they can learn and use to improve themselves. So resilience can vary and it can also improve. So how can we improve our resilience? Well, firstly, foremostly, I would say it's very, very important to look after ourselves, both our bodies and also our minds too. So things like eating healthily, getting plenty of exercise, and also getting enough sleep are really, really important if we want to do something to improve our own resilience. Take time to relax too. We all have times we've got to work hard. If we're in school or college, or if we're at the workplace, yes, we've got to work hard, absolutely. But it is really, really important to take time to take a break, chill out, relax, recharge, and sort of, not work ourselves to death. We do have to kind of have that kind of self-care too. Also important is the reality that we can't deal with every problem by ourselves, right? We can try and kind of tackle problems on our own, but life throws a lot of stresses at us sometimes, and there will always be times when we need to talk to others, seek help, even if it's just sort of getting something off our chest that we're worried about. So whether it's friends, family, and teachers, do remember it's really, really important to have those times when you talk to somebody else about how you're feeling and how you're coping. And don't feel too bad about mistakes. Try not to beat yourself up about them. Every person on this earth has to make mistakes. We actually have to make mistakes in order to learn, in fact. And lastly, do celebrate your achievements. we won't get everything right in life, but we do get some things right. And if you have achieved something, reward yourself, shout about it, feel good about it, because you deserve it. So by now you might be noticing that resilience has got something to do with how we think about certain situations in life. And we can approach things in a kind of a sort of a negative way or a less constructive way, or we can approach them in more of a positive and a realistic way. So I've got here on the left-hand side 3 examples of fairly negative thoughts that might be characteristic of a lack of resilience. So let's say if we imagine a person who was trying to apply for a job and they're not having much luck, somebody who needs to work on their resilience might then tend to give up and think, well, what's the point? I'm never going to get a good job. That could also come from a lack of confidence too. So what we can do, if we notice that we tend to think in that sort of way, we can make a choice to think differently, and we can do our best to replace these thoughts with more realistic and positive ones. So instead of thinking, for instance, I'll never get a good job, we could look at it differently. We could say, okay, well, it may make time. Perhaps there aren't as many jobs around at the moment as there are at other times, but eventually, if I keep making an effort, if I keep trying, I will find a good job. So it's not saying it's going to be the perfect job or the best job in the world, but it's realistic, okay? So it can happen, but it may just take longer than I'd ideally like. Or if we've made a mistake or something's go wrong and we feel, oh, I'm so disappointed in myself, I feel really sad and down about it. That's kind of natural in a way, but we don't want to dwell in that too long. So another way of looking at a mistake is, well, it's a chance to learn and get better. So if you find yourself noticing, well, I feel disappointed or down about myself quite a lot, you can sort of reframe that as, I'm always learning, I'm always getting better. And the last one here, I just can't finish anything. So for instance, that might be a sense that, oh gosh, I've got so much on, I've got to do my work, my revision, I've got to tidy my room, I've got to do my part-time job, I've got to feed the cat, I've got all these different things going on in my life. I never ever seem to finish anything or do it properly. So that's sort of about, managing all the tasks I've got, and that might be quite stressful. So a positive approach to that would be thinking to yourself, okay, I'm determined to approach things one task at a time. Yeah, so it's not pretending that you don't have all of those different responsibilities, but it's maybe a more realistic approach to them. This is a good quote from a man called Michael Jordan, who is very, very famous in the sporting world. He's one of the most famous basketball players of all time. And this is a quote that encapsulates what he learned from some of the mistakes he made in his career. So he says, I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So if you want to succeed in life, it is a good thing to make mistakes, because that's the only way, realistically, that we're going to learn. So then, how can you make use of some of the learning from this webinar then? What can you take away? So if you want to try and build your own resilience, one thing I'd suggest is to try and notice your own negative thoughts. Maybe try and keep a diary of them, or maybe try and tell a teacher or an adult or a friend the kind of thoughts you tend to notice coming up again and again and again, and try and write them down perhaps. Once you've done that, just as we did earlier, see if you can think of more positive and realistic thoughts to replace them with, and write those down too. Now, the next step is the most important one, because if we want these kind of positive thoughts to become habitual, we have to practice. It's a bit like exercise. If I want to get fitter in my body, It's not going to happen by sitting and wishing it to happen. I actually have to go out and do something. So if you want to get a little bit more resilient and a bit more positive in your thinking, you're going to maybe have to make an effort to do it to begin with until eventually it becomes second nature. So my suggestion is to find a time of the day, look at your positive thoughts and actually repeat them to yourself. And while you're doing this, think of your resilience a bit like a muscle that's getting stronger, or maybe a plant or a tree that's a little bud perhaps to begin with, but it's growing slowly, growing stronger and stronger and stronger, because this process is watering it and feeding it and giving it the strength to eventually become the resilience that you want. So have a go at that and see how you find it. So then, where can you get further support? So at the top, the first two links are two charities, Young Minds and Kooth. Both of them have a wealth of information about emotional well-being and also mental health. If you have any difficulties thinking about your career options and what you could do after school or after college, if you live in Devon or Cornwall, then CSW Group is our website, has a wealth of information there. We might have a careers advisor in your school. If you're not from the Southwest, do go to your school or college and ask to speak to a qualified careers advisor. They are the best person to help you look at all the options you've got and help you sift through them and work out what's going to be the right thing for you. Childline, that's another charity with a helpline for which is particularly helpful if you're feeling very distressed or worried, and maybe perhaps if you don't really know who else to talk to in your life, in your personal life. And also don't forget, your school, your GP, these are other sources of support that are available to you. So this is important to know because, like I said earlier, we can't tackle all problems in life on our own. There are times when we need the help of others. And here are a few suggestions of where to seek that. Okay, so I'm just having a look at the Q&A box. Not seeing any questions live. So if anybody listening does have a question and they don't want to kind of ask it right now, I'm going to show you the email address to send that to in a moment. But before we do, this is our list of webinars. So we have more webinars on Thursday the 18th of March and Friday the 19th of March. So if you're able to, please come to those. We'd love to see you there. And the question email address is careerquestion@cswgroup.co.uk. So if you send any questions if you got there, we will happily deal with you directly. So thank you very much for attending. There is an evaluation poll that will come up in a minute. We'd really love to hear your feedback. So other than that, thank you for your time, and we hope to see you at our next session.